All right, good afternoon, everybody, and we're back, season 2 of the E29 Baseball and Softball Journeys podcasts. I wanted to thank my sponsors right off the bat. It's been a couple weeks, so I'm a little rusty. We have a new sponsor that I'd like to welcome, Boyle Fishing Gear, right here in Riverside. They do everything from hats, t-shirts, tank tops, shorts, all of your fishing apparel needs. Again, Chihuahua Cerveza out in Newport Beach, the Chihuahua Brewery, Phil and all the fine folks down in Newport are open for business if you're out in that area. And again, 100% Media, the gentleman that put on all of this production for you, the camera, the editing, etc. And once again as well, Adam Schwartz Real Estate. Adam provides the facility, provides the technology, and he provides all of the media production portion for us. So again, thank you. Today, folks, again, I was very, very lucky to get our guest in today from his busy schedule, which is now reopening again. I was able to get Mr. Jesse Zepeda, the assistant coach at Cal Baptist University right here in Riverside. So, Jesse, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me, Ernie.
It's great to get you in, and like we were just chatting right now, it's tough because we're still kind of in that quiet time, but then there's that transition now where things are opening back up. I think we just went into phase 2, I think is what they call it. So some light reopenings of different things, and now kind of seems like we're going to be able to move towards more sports and more practicing and things like that.
Yeah, we're really excited. At CBU, we are actually working out right now. Our kids are taking online classes, but we are able to do individuals and start practicing a little bit. It looks different. It really does. But our university has been tremendous as far as giving us the guidelines, educating our kids too, as far as how to be safe, what to do. And so it's been really a positive influence for our players, and they've handled it really good. So we've been excited. We've been off the field for a long time. Obviously, there are bigger and more important things than just baseball with this, whole COVID situation. But, again, it's been great for our kids to be educated on how to take care of themselves, how to be safe. They've been being tested. Coaches have been tested. And so it's been a positive experience so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was actually one of my questions, too. Actually, you're my first coach that's been in since they've kind of opened things up a little bit. You mentioned it looks a little different. So from a coaching standpoint, what is your routine now? How has that changed? I know there's more than just coaching now that you have to do.
Sure. And well, first and foremost, it changes daily. And that's what, when we were talking about, hopefully I wanted to come on and spend time with you. But our schedule changes daily. We just don't know how it's really going to look. So it's got to be really fluid. We try to plan and prepare, obviously. But to answer your question, a little bit smaller groups, obviously they got to wear masks. We're practicing all the social distancing. So we're taking all the precautions that we need on that end of it. So for our days as coaches, they look a little bit longer. We're on the field with smaller groups. But for me, hey, we're on the field. So yeah. I'm excited about that. And our players understand we're working out of 3 different dugouts. So instead of everybody in one big group, we're using all of our space that we possibly can. Even our weight training has been the same. It's been at the baseball field. We're breaking them up into smaller groups. So we're working and trying to do everything we possibly can just to make sure that, our student athletes are staying safe. And it's been positive.
Yeah, it's interesting because I kind of envisioned it to look a little like a football team. Yeah. You've got your linemen, and you've got the positions broken down a little smaller. So I think for coaching, being that you haven't been around them for a while, maybe that smaller group setting might be a little bit more impactful for your guys, and it might be a little bit easier to kind of bring guys up to speed and do it that way.
It actually has been great. Yeah. I love it. I mean, again, I really like that small group setting because you can really dive into it. And I think the one thing that we do at CBU and Coach Adcock is, basically is tremendous at it is development. And that's what we really hang our hat on at CBU, is that we're going to develop our players. And so to be able to have this time and in those small groups, you can be really diligent in what you're doing. Yeah. Even like with some of our hitting groups, it's 2 players with 2 coaches. So it's one-on-one stuff where we're really getting time in. Now, again, it extends our days. They make them very long. But, hey, anything we can do for our student athletes, we're really excited. And, again, I'm starting to see them really starting to grow. And the other part of it, too, I think they're very excited to be back on the field. They got something taken away from them. And like I told them, sometimes we take this game for granted, and I told our players, how many times did maybe we take a day off last spring? Right. And man, do you wish you could have had that back? Well, now you have that opportunity. When you're talking about some of the seniors that got, another year granted to them from the NCAA. And so I'm telling them, don't waste a day. I mean, every day is special. It could be an injury. It could be, who knows, to have this game taken away from them. So for them, they've been working really hard. They're excited. It's been fun. It's been really fun.
Yeah, that was one of the things, too, that I was curious about. And I just noticed it. You see things on TV, and sometimes you don't really pay attention to them. But I think it was Gatorade or Pepsi or someone had a commercial where you had these professional athletes, and they made reference to, now you've got it back, or if you ever said, I wish I could have a second chance. So in essence, every one of your players has got a second chance because they actually tangibly had something taken away that they enjoy, and now it's given back to them. And so my curiosity was to see how many of those players actually take that and run with it.
They really have. I mean, and they have. I mean, it's been trying times, obviously, the last few months, not knowing really what they can do, can't do, how they working out, where they're doing. So, we did Zoom meetings, we were doing all the stuff that everybody else was doing as well. Trying to give them, ideas and opportunities to kind of how to benefit themselves. And we kept telling them, either you're going to get better or you're going to get worse today. So try to, get something out of the day. Yeah. If it's just doing push-ups, if it's doing sit-ups, whatever you need to do, try to get better today. Yeah. And they did. They really took it. Our guys looked great physically. That was one of my concerns. I didn't know how they were going to come back, from not having facilities to work out, weight rooms, different things like that. And but they look great. I think they took the time to get better. I do. So, and they're excited to be back on the field. And you're a baseball guy, to be back with your team, and there's something to be said for just being back around the guys and that camaraderie. And there's so much that you learn from sports, just as far as teamwork and accountability and discipline. I mean, there's so much that goes into it, and I think they missed that, and they realize that now they have that back. They're excited. Yeah,
and it is something where, and you and I both experience this, it's something to know when that time is coming to an end and be able to kind of adjust and come to grips with it. But when it's taken away abruptly through an injury or through something like that, and like they've experienced now, it's a totally different dynamic in trying to deal with that. And so, especially being that young, it's a whole different type of family that they essentially lost for a few short period of time. So that, I think, has got to be more of a mental lift for these guys too.
100%. And I mean, you see them every day interacting on the field. They're just excited to be back with their guys, and their family, like you're saying. And they were all, at home, and they wanted to get back to this. So, we always talk about team dynamic and having a good group, and this year's team, really, I can really see that connection, that they're excited to be back. They're working hard together. They enjoy being around each other, and they're appreciative of the time that they have on the field. And I think that's a big thing, because sometimes, I heard a good coach tell me one time that sometimes now with this generation of players, it's more about motivation than information, meaning that you got to motivate players. And for us, when we played, we were motivated. So they're motivated, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we've discussed in the past with other coaches is how it's kind of given coaches an opportunity, or I guess depending on how you look at it, to kind of recreate how you approach things, because you're looking at things from a different perspective now in the players. Now you have these guys that were looking to you in a different light, because you didn't really know how this was going to play out. We kind of hoped it was going to come back soon, but we weren't really sure.
Sure, and that's, obviously they're taking our lead and our follow, and we're being very upfront with them and telling them, hey, it's going to be, every day might be different. We're going and we're flowing and we're going to change. I think the one thing that Gary did a very good job, Coach Adcock did a very good job of even challenging us as coaches, is during this time, what are we going to do to get better? And try to, like to your point, change what we're doing a little bit. And what we did was hit a little bit more of the technology phase of it, learning more about TrackMan. And we added a thing called BATS, where it's a video thing. And then, we did just different things that are going to help us get better, because we didn't know what it was going to look like. We didn't know if it's going to be small groups the entire time. How are you going to keep these guys motivated? How are you going to keep them engaged? Would it be more video work, one-on-one? So we thought outside the box and try to really figure out how we're going to go about this in different scenarios. It could be back to normal. It could be maybe we're just small groups the entire fall. So we planned, we prepared. But as a coach, I think all of us as our staff, and Coach Adcock was the one that really pressed us to this. We got better. We got better. We challenged ourselves to learn more in different areas that we didn't know. And for me, I know the game and I understand the game, and I trust my eyes. But that technology phase of it, it's new, and so you're learning it. And so I dove into that, and it's really helped me as well.
Yeah, just the nature of athletics is physical, and when you take that away from a coach, it's right. Almost like you're taking away one option that they have to teach. So now you have to get stronger in your other areas. And right. Again, like you'd mentioned, I know how to show someone how to field a ground ball or hit a fungo, or sure. Now all of a sudden I have to explain it and be able to do it without actually letting them see me do it. So it was kind of interesting to listen, because coaches need to be challenged too. And I think sometimes the players don't understand that. They kind of think they put it on autopilot because everything's so regimented, but we don't know everything all the time.
We don't. We don't. And again, I mean, we're growing, and if we're not growing, then why do we expect them to grow? So, sure. For me, that was important for me this during this time.
And so I'm assuming, you'd mentioned earlier the recruiting, a lot of video, just over and over and over, and was there a lot of new video coming in, or was it just kind of focusing on maybe a few players that you guys are kind of really locked in on, or was it just? I'm curious how it went, because you don't really know the numbers of players that you're going to get because of who's coming back and things like that. And I know that's a challenge talking to other coaches, numbers in general, what you're going to have come back and bringing in guys, and how's it going to affect next year's class, that sure. type of thing.
And that's been one of our biggest challenges, because honestly, we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen next year. Are they going to give us roster relief? Is there any scholarship increase, decreases? I mean, no one knows right now. So what we're really trying to do, and the one thing we do at CBU is we don't over recruit. So we want to make sure that we're doing it right. We stand by our guys that we're committed to and have committed. So right now we're kind of in that holding phase a little bit. Now, are we still actively recruiting? 100%. But we still have to figure out basically how it's going to go with the NCAA and what's going to happen. Because everybody got roster relief for 1 year, but we don't know what's going to happen next year. We're hearing that hopefully in the next month or so we'll know. That would help out, because obviously you have that November signing period coming up.
Sure.
But yeah, actively recruiting, obviously. To answer your question about the video, we're watching everything that comes through. Now, with that being said, there are some, I hate to say it for some of these young kids, but they're trying to figure out what to go to and what to do,
sure.
Because they're going out and playing because they want to be seen by schools. We can't be everywhere. We can't watch everything. So there's a lot of things that's coming out that's saying, school X might be there, school X will be watching. That might not be the case. So what I always say is, if you're interested in the school, to reach out to that school and email them and say, I'm going to be at such and such an event, and I heard it's being streamed. Are you guys going to be watching or not watching?
Sure.
Rather than just relying on, what basically that organization is saying. So, and that's been difficult in ourselves. That's ever changing. So.
Well, and actually that was going to be my next question, because, dealing with a lot of different high schools and high school players, ultimately we get the questions,
sure.
How is that going to look next year? And initially you kind of looked at this as, maybe it's going to be a couple months and we'll just lose this season, and then summer we'll be right back on track. And then that didn't happen. Okay. And so now it's kind of looking like maybe it's going to affect the next year's class. So those kids are wondering, well, should I go to these showcases? Am I still going to be looked at? Yeah. Is there going to be room for me? Is it going to be my class that gets skipped? And then, so there's a lot of questions with those high school players that are looking to move on. And so just trying to figure out from them, my best advice was stay the course.
100%.
Either way, you still have to maintain your grades. Either way, you have to stay in shape. You still want to try to get better. Whatever the time is and whenever that time is, you want to be at your best and ready to go. Coaches understand that we all went through this, and so things might look a little different for you academically, SATs, ACTs, things like that, but you have to just stay the course. So.
Yeah, and I say the same thing, and I 100% agree with you, is they got to stay the course. And everybody's road is going to be a little bit different. Is it going to be different this year for this recruiting class? It might be. Just because of the fact everybody got their year back. So now you're pushing back recruiting classes, which is going to be very interesting to see how we're going to manage.
Sure.
our roster. But with that being said, they have no control over that. And that's what I'm telling the kids. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep working hard. Academically, every recruit I talk to, that's what I hit on, is the academic part, because it's different for them right now. Now they're going to online classes. It looks different for them, and they're in an impactful time, their junior, their senior year, where their grades can't slip. Yeah. So that's what I'm really hitting on them, is just make sure that they're taking care of, their academic portion of it, staying on top of it. If they have any questions, I try to help them out with that, because to your point, that gives them options. Yeah. And like we talked about too, Ernie, is, every kid is going to have a different path. All of us had a different path. If it's going to a junior college for a year or two, or going to Division I, it's going to all be different. So I always say, play this game if you're going to play it for the love of the game, and it will take you to the direction that you want to go. At the end of the day, we're all going to have to work for a living, so that degree is the most important thing. Right. So get yourself in a position where you can earn that degree. But if you want to play this game for the right reason, then keep working, keep playing it for the right reason. Don't play for the scholarship. And I tell kids that. A lot of times, everybody's playing because they want to get that commitment or that Division I scholarship or D2 scholarship or whatever it is. I tell them, play for the right reasons. Play for the love of the game, and whatever's going to happen, it will work out for you.
Yeah, I mean, that's great advice. And again, I hate to keep falling back to this, but trying to explain to kids that the unnerving part of it, I think, the younger you are, is that the people that you've always looked to for all the answers don't have them. Sure. And we're trying to figure them out, and we're trying to give everyone the best advice. I mean, because we're trying to find the best advice, too, from our own personal, from finances, from jobs, from things like that. So it's going to trickle down, and trying to get them to try to stay out of that panic. Hey, maybe there's not going to be a lot of early sign guys like before. Maybe things are going to be a little bit longer in happening, or, maybe you're going to have to take some different courses now because of the way things are being given to you educationally. So once they figure all that out, then everyone else is going to readjust and make things the way that they need to be. So again, just focus on what it is you can control. And, my advice to a lot of the kids now is look at it this way. This is a really good test run for you high school players, because there's a lot of classes and there's a lot of schools that are predominantly online.
There are, yeah.
So the more proficient you get at that, it's going to be easier for you to transition into that.
100%.
Because that's most of your job.
And another thing that I've been telling a lot of recruits too as well is you're going to have to be patient. I mean, you really are. I mean, you're seeing kids that are still committing. You're seeing some of these verbals. But in reality you're going to have to be patient, just because we just don't know. Yeah. And the other part too is if they try to rush into something, into a decision, they might be putting themselves in a bad position, because now all of a sudden, if the NCAA comes back and says we got to be back at 35 next year, that means our roster cap, and you're committing a bunch of players, then certain players are going to have to go. Yeah. At CBU, we don't take that route. We want to make sure we know the information. We want to make sure we're doing right by our players. So yeah, that's, again, every recruit I basically talk to is just be patient right now. Yeah. It is a little bit different. Stay the course. But and it's hard, because you do see kids that are committing. I mean, Twitter, social media now is just it's just killing everything. Yeah. But these kids are just they're obviously just, they see players committing, and then they worry about when's it going to happen for me. So my advice is just be patient, and to your point, stay the course, and good things will happen.
Well, and let me ask you this, and just so it comes from you, an educated source, and I try to explain to kids too, but you can do this since you mentioned social media. What percentage do you think is that of high school players? Just take our Southern California area of the early signs. I mean, if you're looking at it from a 17-year-old, 16-year-old perspective, you're thinking that's 90% of the guys and I'm being left out. Yeah. Realistically, it's not.
It's not. It is not. I mean, obviously everybody's on social media. And they're doing their thing, and there's a lot of great things on social media where we're promoting. But for us, again, we just try to get the information. We're on Twitter. We see what kids are doing. But I think a lot of times what happens is kids, to your point, panic a little bit, because they're seeing what's happening with other players and stuff like that, and again, that's all good stuff. I mean, when kids commit, they blast it out, which they should. Sure. But again, it's got to be just the patience, and to your point, I mean, I always say play the game for the right reason, because you love to play the game and you're working hard at it, and good things will come out of it. And if you're patient, and again, it might be different courses for everybody. Everybody has their story, and But if you just do it for the right reasons and find the right fit, then I think good things will happen.
Yeah. Well, and now that you kind of touched on that, let's fall back into it. So when we had talked before, I had told you that I always like to start with your journey, so to speak.
Yeah.
And since we had kind of touched on it, how everyone's path is different, and we chatted a little bit last night. So why don't you let everyone know how you got to CBU and,
Sure.
and your baseball history and how you ended up there and kind of some of the turns you took and that put you here?
Sure. Well, originally I'm from the Central Coast, Santa Maria, California, and
Not a bad place.
not a bad place. It's a great place to live. The Central Coast is beautiful.
Yeah.
Went to Brigetti High School. I was very fortunate. My dad coached my whole life. He coached baseball my whole life. So I was brought up on the baseball field. And I think that really has molded me as a coach. It molded me as a player. And the reason being is because I believe my dad taught me how to look at the game differently. It wasn't just being a fan of the game. It was being a student of the game. And so there was a lot of times that, we would watch games, or he would take me to even a junior college game when I was 8 years old, and we would sit next to the dugout, and he would, explain to me, like, do you understand why this happened, or do you see what they're doing here? So at kind of an early age, it helped me to see the game just kind of through different glasses, as I said, as a coach. And it helped me as a player, because obviously you see me, I'm not very physically, big, strong, or any of that, but I was a good player. And so got to play in the area code games, which was big for me. Went and signed to go to Fresno State out of high school. Played there my freshman year, played a lot. It just wasn't the right fit for me. Fresno State's a great university. I'm not saying it, just for me it wasn't right. So I ended up transferring, and that was hard because I had to go to a junior college. And sometimes when you're looking at a Division I athlete that was on scholarship that had to go to a junior college, that was kind of a tough pill to swallow, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
That's where I played for Coach Lee. And Coach Lee obviously now is the head coach at Cal Poly SLO. I really learned the game from him. Besides my dad, Coach Lee is my mentor. And I just talked to him actually a few days ago. So got to really learn the game from Coach Lee. So I played at Cuesta Junior College. And then from there, I got a scholarship to go to the University of Oklahoma. And that was, an incredible time. Got to play in the College World Series at Oklahoma, and then was drafted. Played 5 years in the minor leagues, which that was, it's funny because when I look back on my life, and professional baseball is great, 100% is. I loved it, but my best times were in college, because I think that's where you really, you have your great friends, you're around guys. Professional baseball is a business. It really is. And so, but the one thing professional baseball really helped me out with is I was always a shortstop. And when I got to pro ball, I had to play second. I had to play third. I played some outfield. And that really helped me as a coach because then all of a sudden I had to learn how to play these other positions. So when I got into coaching, I got to play them. I had to understand how to, teach that. So for me as a player, that's kind of how it went. I was very fortunate to be a very young Division I coach. When I was done playing baseball, I was out for about a year, and Coach Lee came to me, and we had talked, and I got hired at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. Spent 7 years there. It was a great experience learning from Coach Lee, and again, he's a special person, a mentor to me. Then went to Long Beach State for 5 years and coached there, and then now at CBU, I'm going on my 6th, so it's time has flied, and I feel very blessed to be at CBU. I really, just being around these kids and really impacting their lives. I've always said this, the wins and losses are great, but when you really understand as a coach how you impact these young men's life, that's a special thing. Yeah. And so, I really love my time at CBU. To your point, I've never looked for another job. That's never been me. I've always, just done my work and worked hard. And when I left Cal Poly to go to Long Beach, they came to me once. I said no, and they came back to me again a second time. And then finally Coach Lee, being Coach Lee, said, "Hey, this is an opportunity you have to take." And I learned a lot at Long Beach State too. So excited to be at Cal Baptist. You see where university is just incredible. What people don't really realize unless you've been on that campus is what direction we're going. Yeah. And people always say, it's trending up. It's trending in the right direction. Sure. Facilities are great. The budgets are great. The programs are great. It's an exciting time to be at Cal Baptist, and Obviously in our first year going Division I in 2019, we won the conference. So that says a lot to, what Coach Adcock has done in the past to build it, to get it ready, and the direction we're going. So, yeah, excited on where we're at and where we're going. We do have a lot of work to go, and we know that there's some hurdles we still got to, get over. But for the most part, we're really excited about where we're at.
Yeah, it's very interesting watching that program develop. Because when I first moved out here, it was still I want to say they were NAIA at the time. Yeah,
they were.
And then moving up, and then when Gary took over, it's funny because I'd always watched the players that he'd brought in, and I kind of thought, wow, that was a little bit different. There was some guys that were maybe not single position players. They were a little bit more on the athletic side, or you could almost see the way he was recruiting that he was building up for another step.
Sure.
And he kind of fit right into that next step when they went from NAIA to D2 to D1. And so you could really see that lane, and it was almost in rhythm with the school. The school was getting bigger. I mean, that thing's almost half a freeway block now.
Correct. Yeah.
When you get off there, it looks like Staples Center or something.
Yep.
But for where you were and starting out, it's interesting you had mentioned that going from a Division I at Fresno to a junior college, and how you said, some people look at that as a step down, and I think that's very unfair for a lot of kids. I'm sure you come across a lot of them, and it's almost something that they would hang their head over, as if I failed at the Division I level. And you touched on it a little bit too, but your job as a coach, even if you're telling a player that he's not someone that you're going to bring in, you're doing it in a helpful way.
100%.
You're not doing it in a negative way, the way a lot of players see it.
Yes, 100%. And again, if you're playing the game for the right reasons and you love the game, then you just want to play. And I think the other thing is what's difficult is you can't get better if you're not playing.
Yeah.
And if you're going to go to a place and sit for 2-3 years, it's hard to develop. So a lot of times, and I've said this, and junior college is a great route. I mean, to your point, what you said earlier, there's a lot of good division or junior college coaches out there and great programs, and they develop. So for us, we look at the junior college ranks too as well, to pull guys, and some of our better players do come out of junior college.
Yeah.
Now we are a little bit more high school based just because we are a private school, but
sure.
The junior colleges are out, especially in Southern California. They're tremendous. So yeah, everybody has a different path, man. They really do.
And I think it's just getting them to understand, I say them, meaning the players, that sometimes the brightest spotlight may not always be the best situation for some guys, and understanding that physically not everyone develops the same, or even emotionally. Sometimes going away to school is not the best bet for some players, to where some guys need it. They need to get away from the area and grow up a little bit. So I think that when coaches such as yourself express that to players, I think that kind of takes some of that negativity down for them and go, wow, look at where you're at, and you went this route too.
100%.
Sometimes I think they look at all these guys at the Division I level and go, well, he must have played Division I, he must have played pro ball, right out of high school all the way through. He was one of those early sign guys, but that's not the case. So your pro ball, what organization were you with?
So I was with the Detroit Tigers for a year, Toronto Blue Jays for 3, and Angels for 1. So yeah, it was a fun ride. Bounced around, was on the East Coast for the most part. All basically A-ball times. One of my great moments was my mom, dad, and my younger brother were out actually watching me play when I was in A-ball, and our manager called me in the office and said, hey, you're going up to AAA, but you're going to go and play in the Hall of Fame game. And because the AAA third baseman got hurt. So I went up to AAA. It was great. I was in Syracuse for a few days, and we took about 5 guys from AAA to meet the major league team to play in the Hall of Fame game. We were playing the Baltimore Orioles, got to play against Cal Ripken, which was incredible. But when we rode over on the bus, in the van, we took a van over. Roy Halladay was in the minor leagues at the time. So got to spend time with Roy, and obviously, we know his tragic, story and situation, but loved being around Roy. He was a great guy, and he actually started the game, and Ed Sprague was the starting third baseman. And again, going back to, I was always a shortstop, but I knew how to play third, I knew how to play short, I knew how to play second. That was the reason why, they brought me up, and got in the game in the second inning and got to play the rest of the game, and getting to play. I'll never forget, I turned around and Jose Canseco was playing left field, and Sean Green was playing right field, and Carlos Delgado was playing first, and you're like, wow, you're on the field with all these guys.
Yeah.
It was pretty special. So that was a special moment.
Yeah, no, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's actually something to definitely tell people about.
Yeah.
Wait, I mean, you know, for you, there's a little bit of that fan. You know, every ball player has that. That's what gets us started and gets us following. So, you know, to be in that position, there's a little bit of a, hey, I'm here with them, but I'm also remember seeing these guys play as I was growing up. What, through the minors, if you may not have one, but favorite stadium, favorite town? Sometimes the small towns are the best.
They really are. I'm trying to think. There was some Charleston, South Carolina was a great stadium. That was where the Braves played, and they were really good. They had Rafael Furcal and some of those guys, so that kind of made it too. I think for me, you know, playing in some of those against some of those best guys, like everybody says, you know, who was the toughest guy you faced, and for me it was CC Sabathia. You know, so I look at it more like that. The Yankees were always good, so Greensboro was a fun town. You know, and they you know, they would sell out. So yeah, for me it was more about competing against some of those guys, you know, and facing the best. And we had good teams when I was there. I played with Michael Young, you know, who was a great major leaguer, Vernon Wells. So, you know, that part of it was probably for me more the competition part of it, like who you played against and competing against, you know, CC Sabathia or some of those guys. Because the stadiums are all good, you know. But to your point, some of those small towns, they're fun, man. Because, you know, the people really, they dive into those summer leagues, man. They really enjoy coming out and watching the ball. Yeah,
some of them, there's nothing close. So that is their major league stadium. 100%. And every night it's packed, and every night they're, you know, ready to go for the home team. And they know everyone on there that comes up goes down. And so that makes it kind of fun for the players.
Yeah.
As far as the going through the minors and things like that, you had mentioned earlier, it's almost two types of baseball. And when you're playing at the college level, it's not that you don't play at the professional level for the love, but it's a job at that point. And what were some of the differences that you had mentioned that your best experiences were in college? So comparing the two, what do you think was the biggest difference for you other than the camaraderie?
The camaraderie is the big thing for me, but you know, you're playing for a university. I think it's still a team. You know, it's a team aspect. When you get to the minor leagues, it's about you. I mean, you're trying to get to the big leagues, and it's cutthroat. And you know, if we're in the same position, I'm trying to take your job, you're trying to take my job. But what that trains you for is life too. You know, because when you're working and you're in, you know, that's how, you know, life is. You got to be competitive. You got to be able to, you know, win a job. So, but yeah, for college, I just my experience was just incredible. You know, getting to play in the College World Series was something really special. That was, I think, for me more than anything, and what my dad always kind of taught me was that was kind of the goal, is, you know, to get a scholarship to go play baseball. You know, so for me, looking back on it, that was something special that I was able to do for my family. My parents put so much work and time into my brother and I, and to be able to get a scholarship to go play. So that alleviated some of the money that they would have to put out for me to get my degree and earn my degree, which ultimately that was, you know, was the end goal. But to be able to play in college and go to the College World Series and do some of that special stuff, it was, I know for my parents, my dad especially, that was really special to do. Because I remember, you know, watching the College World Series in, you know, the 80s, and you know, and on ESPN, it was like that was the goal, you know. Because I think the other part too is when you look at the professional game and you look at Major League Baseball, I mean, when I tell people this all the time, this game is played by everybody in the world. It's not just America's pastime anymore. I mean, it's everybody in the world is playing this game. So to think you're going to be the best of the best in the world, that's a tough pyramid to climb. I mean, to get to the top of that. So, you know, for me, college was a great goal. Professionally, it was just icing on the cake, and I enjoyed it. I loved it. It helped me, obviously, like I said, in coaching. But again, it was just, you know, you're playing for something. That's what that's the one thing I think I went back on is, you know, the wins really meant something in college. You know, you're trying to win a conference title. You're trying to win, you know, you're trying to go to a regional. You're trying to get to the College World Series. You're trying to win a national championship. Where in the minor leagues, that stuff is still important, but it's still more about your individual development. And for me as a coach's son, I was always about winning. You know, I wanted to win. And loved being around people that wanted the same thing.
Yeah. And the reason I asked that question was because, at your position, you always run into those players that maybe have to make that decision.
Sure.
Signing out of high school or going to a university. And a lot of them don't understand the professional aspect of it. Mm-hmm. And so just like those incoming freshmen that maybe aren't ready for a Division I or a 4-year and they need more time to grow or to mentally toughen up at the junior college level, it's the same thing with pro ball.
100%.
Taking yourself, do you think you would have been mentally or emotionally ready to sign out of high school in that cutthroat environment?
No, not even close. And that's the one thing that I look at too is it's not so much about the physical ability, mm-hmm. it's emotionally and mentally, are you ready to go out and live that life?
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, Denny Henderson was a great scout, longtime scout, and he said it best. He was doing a presentation and talking to families and parents, and he said, how many of you guys, when you're looking at making a decision to go to college, do you go visit that campus? Mm-hmm. And majority of the parents say, absolutely we do. We go visit it, we go look at it, we watch it practice and this and that. And he goes, how many of you have been on the backfield mm-hmm. of spring training and watching those guys grinding out? And then looking at that talent level too. Yeah. So they have those dreams and aspirations. Don't want to take it away from them. They should have those things. But the reality is, do you understand really what it looks like mm-hmm. and how competitive it's going to be?
Sure.
So he brought up a great point. He said, go see what it looks like. Go to a minor league game and see what those athletes look like mm-hmm. Because they're different. Yeah. They're different. They're special athletes. And every level you go up, it gets better and better. So, to your point, Ernie, I think every level you go to. One thing I always say about college baseball or college athletics in general, which I really appreciate, and I take as a coach, I really take serious. Coach Adcock, actually, we just had a meeting yesterday. We're meeting with our student athletes mm-hmm. next week to go over their classes with mm-hmm. them, basically, to make sure that, they understand what their assignments are, how they're doing, just to get ahead of it. So I always say college athletics, you're in a controlled environment, mm-hmm. Which that means is you have professors that care about you, you have coaches that care about you, you have academic advisors that care about you, you have people that are actually helping you navigate 18 to 21, 22 years old. Yeah. Being out, on your own for the first time. In professional baseball, they do. They mm-hmm. have their resources. There's no doubt about that. But it is a little bit different. Mm-hmm. You're a little bit more on your own. So to your point, that's where I'm not saying professional baseball is bad. No. Sure. If you're right for it and it's ready, absolutely. I think it's great. But to really grow, develop, I think you're going to be in a controlled environment in college around people that are going to help you, not just baseball-wise, academically, everything. And we all touched our kids. And again, like I say, my biggest thing is I always really go back to the relationships I build with our players. Mm-hmm. And that's what means the most to me, because, when you go to their weddings or you get a text message from them 5 years down the road, those are the cool things.
Yeah. Well, and that statement that you made was what kind of, I was using that to help some of the kids that might be in that position, coming up. Of course, the draft and landscape like that has changed a little bit, but that's one thing that I think as a younger player, you just assume I'm ready, you know, at the high school level. If they're looking at me, if they're interested in me, they must think I'm ready. Mm-hmm. Well, am I really ready? There's a whole difference. When Dad says take out the trash and you don't do it, Dad does it for you. Correct. At that level, if you don't take out the trash, they're going to find someone that will take it.
100%.
And that's kind of a lower level example, but just getting them to understand there's a check involved, and when there's money involved, things are different.
100%.
And it's hard for some kids to wrap their head around that. So for your perspective, being in both positions, mm-hmm. it was great for you to say that, hey, look, at that age I wasn't ready. I needed that time to prepare for that, which was going to make it more successful for you. Sure. So fast forward now, you're at Cal Poly. When you were there, what type of, let's go back a little bit. One of the things I like to ask, when you were in your playing days, had you given any thought to coaching, or was that something that you maybe had another path planned afterwards, and coaching was just kind of something that you started to think mm-hmm. about once it came up?
Oh, I always loved the game. Mm-hmm. I mean, that was something that I loved the game. I always thought I was going to be in the game. As a player, when you're going through it, you never think about what's, next. You think you're going to be the next major league player. Sure. You think you're going to have this long major league career. Mm-hmm. And then when it gets taken away from you, then it's kind of and I'll be honest, and this might even help some players. I mean, when I finally got released by the Angels, it ripped my heart out. It was like, what am I going to do now? It was tough, mm-hmm. because I always thought of myself was going to be my path. Luckily, I got a job working at the probation department because I was doing that in the off season. And I'll never forget, I was in the minor leagues, and we had the FBI come out and talk to us and about organized gambling, basically, and how prevalent it is, things like that. And I always thought, and I talked to the FBI agent, and he said, get into some kind of law enforcement in the off season. So every off season in the minor leagues, I would just kind of do an internship at the probation department. Well, when I got released by the Angels, they offered me a job. I got into it, right away. And then I realized I wanted to get back in the game. And literally it was 6 months. Nothing against, I loved working there, but I just knew my calling was being a coach. And so I coached at a junior college for a year, helping out. And, I was very fortunate. For a lot of people, it doesn't work this way. You don't get into a Division I job, a year or two out of pro ball. It usually takes some time. And you have to put your time in. I was very fortunate, again, looking back at my path, going to Fresno State and then going to Cuesta to play for Coach Lee. That set up the rest of my life. And that's where I think sometimes, we try to put it out there where we want, where sometimes it's like, no, there's a different plan for you and a different path. And that path was right. And, playing for Coach Lee was, again, that moment was great, but it set up the rest of my life. So, I always knew I wanted to stay in baseball. It's a passion that I have. So that's kind of how that happened. I never thought about quit. I will say this: when I did get released, I got offered on the same phone conversation. It was, we're releasing you, but would you like to be a minor league coach? Because we think that you would be a very, very good coach. And I said no. I couldn't do that because I just I saw what that lifestyle as a coach looked like in the minor leagues too. They're gone all the time. So I stepped away for a little bit, and then obviously got right back in and. So that's kind of how that worked.
Yeah, it's interesting because the different people that I've had, and we've had that same question, not everyone looks at that different. It's like we'd mentioned, everyone's path is different. Some guys kind of saw the writing on the wall. Some guys go grudgingly. Some guys are bitter about it. And some guys just look at it and go, you know what, I kind of feel like 2 years ago, I really thought about doing something on the other side of the game. I mean, there's a lot of ways, and the game has a lot of ladders, and it's just trying to find your best place. And I think, for guys with your heart, from what I know about you, you just enjoy passing on 100%. that love and that passion for the game, and that's what kind of feeds you and makes you a great coach. And it's hard to stay away from that. Other jobs are great, but there's not a lot of jobs where you can do that and pour into other people.
100%.
And then being a coach, it's always a little humbling, because like you said, you get to see these guys, and you're taking your chunk of history and putting it into them so they can go a little farther than you did, or have a little more knowledge. And it's hard to take satisfaction in that sometimes, and a lot of guys can't do that. So
100%.
It's easier to step out.
And here's the other part too, and I think what makes a good coach is they realize it's about the player. And I've said I already had my time as a player. I've had my career. Now it's about you. So to your point, I love pouring into our guys, and I take my experiences too. Like, what did I like from a coach? What I did not like from a coach. And so I try to really, with our guys, try to coach how I wanted to be coached. And that way was always have them work through their development rather than sometimes old school coaches do it my way, yell. It's more how does this feel? Work with them, and I think you can build relationships that way. I think that's, and then they buy in and they trust. And when you have a player that buys in and trusts, then you can take them to their full potential. Yeah,
and I think that's kind of a common denominator for all of the guests that I've had. And part of this is self-serving because I've always enjoyed our conversations, as brief and as separated as they are. But you have that temperament, you have that calming demeanor, you have that reassuring demeanor, and I think a lot of players now, that's what they need. They need more communicators and not. For lack of a better word, like you'd mentioned, old school. It's just not that type of environment anymore for players. They're smarter, they have more access to information, and they come in with a bigger knowledge of what they want to do. You just need to kind of try to weed out some of the things that are going to distract them, and kind of let them know that there's a different path, but we can mix in some of your ideas too.
Correct.
And I think that seems to work best, but that's kind of seems to be the common denominator of the coaches that I've had in. And I mean, I like to think all the guys I have are great coaches because they all have that same approach to working for the player rather than making the player work for me.
Correct.
So as far as, so from there you went to Long Beach. And when you were at Long Beach, I'm trying to remember who the head coach was there. I can't remember.
Troy Buckley.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, from there, when you went on, was that your position, did that change? Were you an assistant head coach? Oh,
yes.
Assistant head coach?
Yeah.
Okay. I kind of remember that on the bio, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
So when you did that, was that something that you saw a big difference in your role? Maybe just for people that don't know what the breakdown is. I mean, responsibilities, again, always fall on the head coach ultimately,
Sure.
but there's different things as you're moving to different levels as an assistant that responsibilities come on your plate so you can be ready for that next move.
Sure. And again, I think every place I've been, you take and you learn from. And, at Cal Poly, I had no really coaching experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned a lot. The best thing that could have happened to me at that point was Coach Lee really teaching me about the recruiting process of it, but also the academic process. And then we had a thing that called APR, Academic Progress Report, came in. So he kind of wanted me to dive into a lot of that. So I got to learn the recruiting aspect of it. I got to learn the academic aspect of it. Coach Lee was the offensive coach, and I assisted him. So then when I went to Long Beach, I was in charge of the offense. I was in charge of the infielders, and I was in charge of all the recruiting. So, you take all these responsibilities and start moving them up. It really taught me a lot, just to basically understand the whole dynamic of the Division I level. And so, yes, it was a lot. It was similar to being a head coach without the responsibilities of being the head coach, to your point. And so, we built that program back to what it was. They've had a lot of success there. So that was an exciting time. So yeah, it was good, but I learned a lot, being at both places. And I will say this, being with Coach Adcock, he's actually, him and Coach Lee have even taught me more about the game and being a head coach and just the responsibilities of that, but obviously the organization. And I think that's one thing that, really I'm kind of getting more at Cal Baptist, which has been really good. Where at Long Beach, it was more just kind of the direct and now.
So when you were at Long Beach and you had mentioned your recruiting aspect of it, just again for kids that might be watching or other coaches that might be watching, kind of give me during the peak season of recruiting, what was your schedule like?
So I always saw a funny story. We were at our regionals was in Florida, so we were at the University of Florida in regionals, and we got some rain, so we were rain delayed. It got pushed back. So long story short, we were pushed back all the way to like Monday or Tuesday. Wow. Had to fly back that next day, and I was on a flight that next morning to go to Northern California for 2 weeks, then to Arizona for 2 weeks. And so I think, a lot of young coaches don't realize, like when you're at some of these universities, what that demand is. It's there's a lot, and it doesn't stop. So recruiting has changed, obviously, with COVID and everything that's happening. Right now, currently, we're in a dead period, which means we can't go out and recruit until January 1st. And we'll see what that looks like. But it was a lot. It was a lot. Every school is a little bit different as far as how they attack their recruiting. I can speak on to what we do at CBU. CBU, we really feel that we have a good niche in this area. We try not to miss in this area. We want to make sure, if you look at our roster, a lot of the kids are from our local kids. So I think we do a good job with that. Now we're starting to branch out a little bit more, but we understand where our strong point is. At Long Beach, it was more statewide, to be honest with you, and even getting into Nevada and Arizona a little bit.
So just as a kind of a perspective now that we kind of touched on how it's going to look, one of the things that I've had conversations with people just in general, I think everything that's kind of changed now because of the COVID situation, how can we go back in some ways? It almost doesn't make sense to go back to those long road trips for recruiting when you can live stream, or maybe you can get so much access to video, or maybe now you're a little bit more proficient at doing it that way, or even your home visits. I don't know, prior to the dead period, were you doing a lot of Zoom meetings with Perspective?
Yeah, so it was FaceTime calls, so it would be FaceTime where the kids can actually see the campus and do stuff. It's been difficult. I mean, and it's been tough, because what you really want to do is you want to have them get on campus and get a feel for student life, get a feel for, your coaching staff, get a feel for your players. We're making the best out of this right now, as we can do. I will say I really do enjoy being out and recruiting and being around the players, because I think there's so much more that you can see than just a video stuff. But that's where we're at. That's the climate. That's the recruiting thing that we're doing. So that's what we have to do now. I'm looking forward to hopefully getting back on the road. I don't know, to your point, how that's going to look. So as of now, we're watching the video and trying to do the best we can with that. And but to your point, I'm telling the kids to stay the course, keep doing the stuff. There's so much out there that's parents can take videos or live streams and things like that. And I'll be honest with you too. I mean, we know all these coaches. We know we pick your guys' brain. Hey, how does this player look? How does that player look? So I think that's where a lot of schools are turning to now, is really relying on travel ball coaches, high school coaches, people that are working with these players individually to see how they're progressing, and then obviously putting our eyes on them when we can with video. But it's going to be nice to get back out there whenever the NCAA allows us to.
Yeah, I think about that, and then it's hard because I think I'm a little older than you, but I wonder how much of that is my old school mentality, and maybe I'm just not wanting to see things evolve, or how much of this really was just not necessary. I take example, you look at what the majors have done with their minor league systems. I know the Braves and the Dodgers and probably other organizations had some sweeps last week, cutting back on scouting, and because now for the last 6 months they've been doing everything over video, and pretty much everything is on tape now, every game, every practice. So you really look at the expense, and you look at the possible repercussions of putting someone on a plane and traveling and putting them around people. It does make sense to kind of cut down some of that stuff, and I wonder how far back that's going to trickle. If they're doing it at the professional level where they have access to the most amount of money, how long before some schools are going to, do you really need to go to all those tournaments?
Correct.
And you wonder how that's going to change things.
And it's to your point earlier, it's ever changing. We don't know. I mean, and hopefully that doesn't happen. And I feel for those guys that those scouts that have worked and had long careers, and to your point, there's changes that are happening, but there's changes that are happening, across the board in this country.
Everything,
So, you just got to adjust, and hopefully, we can get through this and get back to some normality. And, but, again, I think, there is so much, to your point, the video and stuff that's out there. I mean, all that's good, but I think there's so much more that we do as college coaches that maybe a lot of people don't realize, the resources that we have for our student athletes. And we're not just developing baseball players, we're developing young men, and we're with them every day. And so I think that there's so much more that goes into that. And I think that experience that they receive, and I know that a lot of these schools realize that too as well.
And I think the video, it just like a text, it's never going to relay that emotion, or and, as far like for this, I have a lot of other friends that I could probably do Zoom or Skype with, but for me, again, that's that old man. It's like I like sitting down and chatting with you and talking, because we don't get to do it. And to be honest with you, we all have things in our lives where we say, this might be our last time we get to sit and talk, and so I want to have that opportunity. And when you're talking to a player, it's a lot easier to kind of read their emotions and get something across to them when you're looking them in the eye, rather than that screen in between, 100%. Especially when they're making that commitment and the family's making that commitment to you as much as you to them. Because you're trying to find that right spot for your child, and the parents are basically entrusting you with their son for the next 4 years. And it's just tough to get that over the screen.
It really is. And I think that's one thing at CBU we do a really good job of, is when we do get families and prospective student athletes on campus, they get a feel of what we really do. And it's not just talk. It's just not us putting a presentation together. They actually see it in action. They get to get around our players. They get to see us at practice. We actually encourage these kids to come to our practice. We want them at our practice to see how we do things. So that's taken away. But again, it is what it is, and we're gonna have to make decisions on how things are going now, and players are going to have to do the same. But yeah, to your point, and I always say this too, Ernie, there's so much that I can see at a game. A kid can say I went 3 for 3 and send me your best swings, but when I watch them on the field, it's like, okay, I know that's going to work or not going to work. Or they can go for 3 and go, no, that's still going to work. Because I love, there's times I'll go to a game and not even tell a kid I'm going, because I want to see their interaction with their teammates. I want to see if they're hustling on and off the field. I want to see the intangible things that a video can't show. So I think that's, to your point, is what we're kind of losing out right now, and that's why we're relying on other people that might be there to help us out. But that's probably the biggest challenge right now. Yeah,
well, it's interesting you mentioned that, because when I see kids week to week, and I'll ask them if they had games or practice or whatever, player will tell me they went 0 for 3. I said, well, was it a positive 0 for 3 or was it a negative 0 for 3? Well, explain to them the first time, and they come back, I had a positive 0 for 3, because there's days you feel great and the ball just doesn't go where it's supposed to go, and then there's days where you didn't do anything right and you're on all 3 times. But being able to see how they approach, just being in the on-deck circle, did they kind of drag the bat coming out of the dugout, or were they eager to get up there because they feel like they figured something out? And there's so much to see of a player's just mental makeup, positive or negative, when they're not at the plate, or they're not, in a position. So, those are tough things to try to relay over the camera. And then I can't imagine, with the players, it's probably awkward for them, because, as I'd mentioned, you're in their eyes, you're holding their future in the palm of your hand, so to speak. So, and my first interaction with you is over camera, so I'm already nervous about it, and rather than seeing you face to face. So, that's interesting. But I was wondering how, maybe you thought that was going to trickle down or trickle up, whichever direction. But hopefully, when you guys get out of the dead period and we get past June, I know some of the high schools have told me that they were cleared to start their fall sports, so they can start light practices. And I think UCLA, USC, or the Pac-12, Pac-12, they just came out and said they were going to start in November. So I think if that goes well, hopefully we turn the corner in January. And fortunately, because of the season, baseball will kind of be right on track as far as that. You won't be behind too much, other than the early practices and things. But for you anyway, you guys didn't have, on a normal year, what was your limitation as far as practice time?
So basically, we moved forward. We were going so we started our individual work. So we had about 3 weeks of that, where they were the small group, and actually we started our first team practice yesterday. So it went well, and so we're moving forward, and we're going as planned. And again, I think it's just educating our players on what they need to do to stay safe and stay healthy, and they're doing that. And so as long as we continue to do that, then hopefully we'll continue to go forward. And there's little quirks, like we don't have our locker room. We're working out of 3 different dugouts, so we space. So we're doing everything, and the university's been great as far as just giving us those guidelines, and our training staff has been phenomenal on that. And so we're doing everything we need to do to service our guys, and but they're excited. They're excited. So we're going, we're moving forward. We're practicing, and it does look a little bit different, but we're able to get our work in, and we're going to practice tonight, which is going to be exciting to get under the lights. And so I was glad that happened, so I can come spend some time with you. Yeah, no, I'm glad that happened too. Like I said, it was fortunate that you were able to come early, and the practice worked that way. And I mean, I was also thinking about that too, as you were saying, you guys are grouping. You guys have a phenomenal setup over there, so space is not something that's hard to find. Not an issue. Yeah, you guys can spread out and get a lot of work done. And I really don't think, for the college level anyway, I don't think there's going to be a big drop-off in anything if everything stays the course. There's plenty of time to get what they need to be, and provided everybody can get physically where they need. Hopefully, like you said, the guys aren't too far off where they should be. And they're all young, so I don't think it's going to be an issue with guys getting injured. And so hopefully, fingers crossed, everything stays the course, and it gets better for everybody. That's can get back out on the road and see some, actually watch some games. It was weird. You kind of start getting used to it too. They see now that the playoffs, they're kind of talking about San Diego and Texas, and I think Los Angeles, they're going to kind of limit it to 3. And I was watching the game last night, and Jacksonville had patches of fans in the stadium, which I don't know how they sorted that out or how they did it, but it was still just kind of a little bit of normalcy. Hopefully we get there. Well, I want to thank you for coming in. All right, Ernie, appreciate it. It's always good to see you, man. I'm glad you're doing it. Appreciate it. I'm glad it was a short trip for you. But tonight when you guys practice, I noticed there's a lot of pictures you guys taking of there, and seeing the guys out there and working, and so that's good to see. That actually was really good. I was glad that we were able to chat about that. So to close it up,
up, like I said, we just kind of say goodbye to the sponsors and thank you again for coming in. And hopefully when we have a part 2, it'll be somewhere in the season.
Yeah.
I can round the guys up and we'll go out to the park and I'll catch you in the dugout.
Absolutely.
And we can just have a quick chat after a win.
Would love to do it again, buddy. Absolutely.
All right, man. Thanks for coming in again. Thank you again, guys, for watching, and we will be back shortly.